Ever started a massive project, like a huge one, and somewhere in the middle you realize, uh-oh, I'm totally off track.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about
Like
fright.
setting off on a road trip, but you forgot the map. Or even like a GPS.
Exactly. And when it comes to research, you know that map. It's actually three things.
Okay.
A really solid problem statement, research questions that are super focused, and goals you can actually measure, ones that show you made an impact.
It's like building a house.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just start, throwing up bricks without a good set of blueprints, right? I mean, these three things, they're the blueprints for research. They make sure you're building something that's strong, something with meaning.
Okay, so let's break it all down.
Okay.
Let's start with that problem statement, because I feel like sometimes that trips people up. They think it's just, stating what's already obvious, but there's way more to it, right?
There really is a good problem statement. It doesn't just identify some issue, it explains why that issue is actually a problem that needs solving. It's digging deeper, like it's figuring out the so what. What are the consequences of this problem? Who's affected? How does it affect them? Why should we even care?
Yeah, it's like the difference between saying there's a lot of traffic
Right.
and saying this traffic is making people late for work. It's costing them an hour every day.
Yeah,
Plus all that air pollution, it's really impacting our health,
absolutely. One's just like a fact,
right?
The other shows the real world impact and why we need to do something about it.
So you're making an argument, a convincing argument for why this research even matters in the first place.
Yeah, it's like the elevator pitch for your whole project.
Right.
Got to get people interested, make them want to learn more.
You gotta hook them.
Yeah, hook them exactly.
Okay, so you've nailed that problem statement. It's awesome, and everyone's on board.
Right.
Now you got to figure out what you're actually going to investigate. That's where those research questions come in, right?
Absolutely. Those questions, they determine everything. The data you collect, the methods you use, how you analyze things. I mean, basically everything flows from those questions.
Wow, so important.
They're the roadmap. They give your research purpose, direction.
But not all research questions are created equal.
Really not.
I've seen so many research projects totally go off the rails
Oh, yeah.
because those questions weren't clear enough.
Yeah.
So what separates a good research question from a bad one? Or even just, a mediocre one?
Well, the key is making sure those questions are specific, they're feasible, and they line up with your problem statement. Let's break those down. So specificity, it's about really narrowing your focus. So instead of asking something super broad like, how does climate change impact the environment?
Right.
You'd want to ask something way more specific like, what's the effect of rising sea levels, on a coastal erosion, but just in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah.
That kind of detail, it makes your research so much more focused,
Yeah.
more targeted, more actionable.
It's like taking a picture, trying to get the entire Milky Way in one shot
Right.
versus using a zoom lens, getting up close to a single constellation so you can see all the details.
Exactly. And that takes us to the next thing, feasibility. Because a great research question, I mean, it's useless if you can't actually answer it.
Right.
You got to think about the resources you have, how much time you have, and the scope of what you're trying to do. Don't try to do too much.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been guilty of that, getting carried away with some big idea and then realizing, wait, I don't even have time to do all this.
It happens to all of us, but then finally we got to think about alignment.
Okay.
Your research questions, they need to directly address that problem statement.
Oh, got
They
it.
should be connected, like threads woven together.
So, like, if your problem statement is all about how social media is affecting teenagers' mental health,
Right.
your research questions shouldn't be about, like, the benefits of social media for businesses or something.
Exactly. Everything has to connect back to that main problem you're trying to understand and hopefully solve.
Okay, so we've got our problem statement. It's compelling. We've got our research questions. They're awesome.
Right.
But how do we know if we've actually been successful? Like, how do we prove that our research has actually made a difference?
That's where measurable goals come in.
Okay.
Those goals, they're the yardstick. That's how you evaluate the impact of all your hard work, how you show the world that your research actually contributed something valuable.
So it's not enough to just do the research, spend all that time and energy, and then just say, well, that was interesting. What's next?
No, you've got to be able to point to specific outcomes, things that you've changed.
Outcomes, I like that.
And those outcomes, to make sure they're meaningful, your goals have got to be specific, measurable, and they have to have impact.
Okay, let's break those down one by one.
Okay.
So what makes a goal specific?
It means being crystal clear about what you want to achieve. So instead of just saying, I want to improve public health,
Which is pretty vague.
way too vague. A specific goal would be more like, I want to reduce the number of kids, who are obese by 15%, but just in this one community.
Got
See,
it.
that's way more focus. You can actually picture that.
It's like putting an address into your GPS
Yeah,
instead of just driving around with no destination in mind.
perfect analogy. And just like your GPS, it needs coordinates,
Right.
measurable goals. They need metrics. How are you going to actually track your progress? What data are you going to collect? What units will you use to measure everything?
So if our goal is to reduce childhood obesity, like you were saying,
Yeah.
we might look at things like their BMI,
Yeah.
their diet, how much exercise they get.
Right. You got to have a way to actually measure those
I
things.
mean, you got to use, standardized methods so everyone's doing it the same way.
Exactly. You need to be able to put numbers to your findings, show that real changes happen.
So specific goals, we got our metrics. What about that impact part?
That's where you connect your research to the big picture, the so what. How are your findings going to make a difference? Maybe change society for the better, maybe inform policy, help us understand the world a little bit better.
So going back to that childhood obesity example,
Right.
the impact could be like lowering healthcare costs,
Yeah.
improving people's lives, or maybe even changing public health policy.
Exactly. It's about explaining what those real world consequences are, how your research can lead to positive change.
Okay, so when we put it all together, the problem statement that gets everyone's attention, those laser-focused research questions, and the goals that actually show the impact, it's like we have a blueprint for success, right?
Absolutely. It's a framework. It guides your whole research journey. Make sure your work is not just smart and insightful, but that it actually means something, that it makes a real difference in the world.
That's what we all want, right?
But of course, research, it's rarely just a straight line. You might have to adjust at your questions, maybe change your goals a little bit, or even rethink some parts of your problem statement as you learn more.
So it's not about sticking to the plan no matter what.
Right.
It's more about having a really strong foundation that can change and adapt as you go.
It's like having a compass. It helps
Yeah.
you navigate, even when you hit those unexpected detours along the way.
I like that.
Research is messy sometimes.
It's interesting how these principles, they seem so simple, like defining the problem, coming up with good questions, and setting goals we can actually measure.
Right.
But they can have a huge impact on the whole research process.
It's true.
It's like they unlock this whole new level of clarity, like you suddenly know what you're doing and why you're doing it.
They're the foundation, the building blocks of research that actually matters, the tools that help us make the world a better place.
And what's so cool is that these principles, they're not just for academics, are they?
Not at all.
I mean, we can use them in so many different parts of our lives.
Yeah, that's what's so great about them. Whether you're starting a business, working on some creative project, or even just trying to make a big decision in your life, having a clear idea of what the problem is, what your goals are, and how you'll know if you've been successful, it can make all the difference.
It's like a secret weapon for solving problems and getting things done.
I like that, a secret weapon.
Speaking of problems, I bet a lot of our listeners out there have had to deal with research questions that were just, not defined very well.
Oh, yeah.
Or projects that totally lost their way because no one set clear goals in the beginning.
Definitely.
What advice would you give to someone who's struggling like that, trying to get their research back on track?
I'd say the first thing is to just take a step back, revisit the basics.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, what's the real problem I'm trying to solve here? Are my research questions focused enough? Can I actually do something with them? Do my goals clearly define what success looks like?
So it's like hitting pause, reassessing before you just keep going.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask other people for feedback. Talk to your colleagues, maybe a mentor, even your friends and family. They can give you a fresh perspective, help you see things you might have missed.
It's amazing how helpful it can be to just talk about your research with someone else.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they're holding up a mirror. You can see your ideas more clearly.
Exactly. And remember, research, it's a journey of discovery. It's not always about knowing all the answers right away. It's about asking the right questions, being open to new ideas, and being willing to change your approach as you go.
So it's a process, always learning, always improving. It's not just about getting to the finish line.
We're all explorers out here, exploring new territory, pushing the boundaries of knowledge.
And the cool thing is, on that journey, you might find something completely unexpected, even if you don't end up exactly where you thought you'd be.
Yeah, that's what I love about research.
It's just like you're trying to find a new way to get to India, but you end up in America.
That's a pretty big detour.
Okay, maybe not that dramatic, but you know what I mean.
I do. It's about being open to those happy accidents, those unexpected discoveries.
So as we wrap things up, what's like the one big takeaway, the thing you really want our listeners to remember about making the research count, making it impactful.
I'd say it comes down to intentionality, being really deliberate about how you define the problem, how you craft those questions, how you set your goals.
Okay.
When you come at research with that kind of clarity, that sense of purpose, you're setting yourself up for success, even if the path isn't always clear, even if it gets a little messy along the way.
So it's like having a North Star, something to guide you through all the ups and downs of research, making sure you're always moving in the right direction.
And who knows, maybe you'll discover a new continent on the way.
Always a possibility.
You never know.
Well, this has been awesome. Such a fascinating conversation.
It really has.
And I think our listeners are walking away with a whole new understanding of how to make their research really matter.
I hope so. It's been great talking with you.
And to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into, well, the heart of impactful research. We hope you found it helpful, inspiring even, as you go out there and tackle your own research adventure. So until next time, keep asking those tough questions, keep pushing those boundaries, and most importantly, keep making a difference out there in the world.